Shalom. Welcome to the Messianic Hour with Rabbi Scott Sekulow. The Messianic Hour is a program designed to give you insight into the Jewish roots of your faith. Rabbi Scott is also here to answer your questions and help you gain a deeper understanding of Bible prophecy. And now, here's your host, Rabbi Scott Sekulow.
Shalom and welcome to another edition of the Messianic Hour. I'm your host, Rabbi Scott. The show is dedicated to reaching the lost and educating the found. I want to encourage you, go to our website at rabbiscott.com and sign up for our free newsletter. When you do that, you get a free gift, the book, I Have a Friend Who's Jewish, Do You, and a prophecy card, 70 key prophecies, where they're found in the Torah, where they're fulfilled in the renewed covenant, and how to share to your unsaved, both Jewish and Gentile friends. It's a free gift from us to you just for signing up at our website and receiving our newsletter. So please go ahead and do that as we continue now going on to our, I think it's our 4th year now on the show, going on our 5th now, as we just celebrated 7707.
Was our first show.
Was our first show, and you weren't on it then. You came a couple months later, and you are now, but you've been with me ever since on it, and so we're celebrating.
Just another thing we do together.
That's right. We should also say this week is our anniversary. We'll be celebrating 23 years.
23, 24.
Right around there, on the 20, like on the 15th of the month. So it's good to be able to do this show as we bring Jew and Gentile together in Messiah. We got a great show in store for you. We're going to be looking at Acts chapter 22. And it's going to be very interesting. And we're also going to be answering your questions. Judy, why don't you tell them how they can answer, send us their questions?
They can send them to mail@rabbiscott.com. That's a great way to get in touch with us. But I guess they could also go and join the Messianic Hour on Facebook. And they can post questions there also, interact with us. We put what's going on the radio. We put the current Torah portions. We keep it involved. So that's another way that they can interact with us is through Facebook on the Messianic Hour group.
That's right. If you want to see what we actually look like, you can go to YouTube and type in the Messianic Hour and watch the show that we are recording each week. And it's a lot of fun to be able to see that as well. Kim does all the video editing of it and does a great job with that. So check that out at YouTube. If you're a iPhone user, we have our iPhone app, so you can download that at the Messianic Hour. And for you Droid people out there, any day we'll be announcing that we have our Droid app up. So be on the lookout for that. We're finalizing it as well. So for you Droids out there, you'll be able to watch and listen to both our services and the radio show right there on your smartphones as well. So we got a lot of ways to get in touch with us. Keep informed. It's so important as we continue this work. We're literally reaching people around the world. People need to know what's going on. And so again, if you have a question, we want to help answer that. We're going to be answering several of them on the second half of the show. We got a really good one in last week, so I'm really excited about it. We're going to be talking about that question as well.
Okay, when you're really excited about a question, that may be the only one we get to.
That's true. But we will answer all questions eventually. So check that out. We're going to be, again, go to our website, rabbiscott.com. You can always plant a tree in Israel as well right there at the website. And that's a great way to remember someone. And remember, we are a listener-supported show. You can donate online at rabbiscott.com. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to the Messianic Hour. I'm Judy Sekulow, and I'm glad that you're with us today. And we are actually going to be starting on Acts 21, about verse 39, because that really is the segue into chapter 22. And we know that right now, Rabbi Shaul has been kind of lynched mobbed. He's been taken to the Antonio fortress. And
Which we've been to.
Yes, we have been to that. If you come to Israel with us, you'll see that. But the remaining chapters of the book of Acts, we're going to see all of these 7 defenses that he's going to present over these ensuing chapters of really where he stands. And unfortunately, we know the end of the story. All of these great defenses that he makes really still doesn't save his life. But we're going to go through those in the course of these upcoming weeks. So why don't you get us started?
Well, Judy, it's interesting. As you said, we're going to see the first one where the crowd gathers around at the temple, and he's being accused. But they're listening, and they're following along with what's going on. And it's interesting, as he speaks to the group, instead of speaking in Greek, his native tongue, he speaks in Hebrew, I would say his natural tongue, or his Jewish-born tongue. And this demonstrates, too, that he was speaking to the people of Israel, and really not to necessarily the diaspora, but really to the Jewish people.
Well, and it could be that the diaspora Jews weren't as conversant in Hebrew as the others, and we know it's the Jewish people in Jerusalem that were causing the most trouble for him, that had the most misunderstanding of what he was teaching. So this is, this is a way that really caught their attention because of his choice of language.
Right, and so he's going to now, they've made several accusations against him, and he's now going to combat each one of those. Now, this was right up Saul's alley because he loved to debate and answer and defend himself. So on the first question, where he was charged, really contrary to the charge that he taught against the Torah, he really pointed out that he was a disciple under Gamaliel, the great rabbi of the day, and was just as zealot for God as they were. So he immediately says, look, you're saying I'm not for Torah. On the contrary. And this is something that Paul has been accused of through the church as well, because they don't understand his logic and understanding. He would give the defense on both ends. Paul was very clear. He knew that the Torah would not get you into heaven, but that because you love the Lord, you would want to honor and obey and follow the Torah. But if you thought that was going to get you into heaven, that wasn't the case. Only through Yeshua, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And that was always Paul's point, was to show that the Torah was still in existence, but it wouldn't get you into heaven.
So I think it's really interesting that he's speaking in Hebrew. He's telling them that, listen, I'm a Jewish person just like you are. I grew up in Jerusalem. I've studied under Jerusalem. I studied under Rabbi Gamaliel. So he's like kind of establishing his credibility among them, not only in his words, but through the language, but through his history, his life history.
Right, and then the next accusation was that he was teaching against the temple. And he responds to them, look, he goes, when I was in the temple praying like I was supposed to, that's when I got this vision, I had a vision of Yeshua. So he's showing them clearly he's pro-Torah, pro-temple as well.
Pro-Jerusalem. And then, they're saying, well, you brought Gentiles into the temple. And that's when he really got into his defense, where he explains what his mission is to the Gentiles.
And what's really interesting, Judy, up until this point, him talking about Yeshua, Torah observance, all this, there's no complaints. There's no
rioting.
No rioting, no blasphemy, no nothing. They're all saying this is fine. You believe in Yeshua, there's not a problem with this. You believe he's Messiah, no problem. It's not until he brings in the Gentiles. Not that he was bringing them in to cause trouble, but on the contrary, he's saying, I'm called to bring the Gentiles into belief of the Jewish Messiah. And that's where the question really came. That's where the rioting and the blasphemy and all this started. It wasn't until he mentioned the Gentiles becoming part of the family, so to speak, becoming part of the body. That's when everything started happening.
And I think it's interesting, too, that he tells them his testimony. He had been gone a number of years. People had moved, people had probably died, people had changed. We know that the high priest system was very corrupt at that time. So basically, he tells them his testimony, how he used to persecute them, how he had this encounter with Messiah, how his life had changed. So he's basically bringing everybody up to speed on what had happened, so that they would again understand that he wasn't just going, on his own, that this was a revelation that he had gotten from Adonai and from Yeshua.
Right, and it, again, like you said, until this point, now once he mentions the Gentiles, that's when the issues start coming into play. Now they're all riled up. They come to seize him, thinking that he is an Egyptian, that it was causing riots as a problem, and he's doing that now here. the centurion is surprised to not only hear that he speaks Greek, but also that he's Jewish and he's an actual citizen, born citizen, natural born. Matter of fact, even he makes a comment that the centurion had to buy his citizenship, but yet Saul, had it naturally.
Well, I guess that, again, it's kind of a little bit of a one-upmanship. And it proved to be very effective. But now, he's kind of got a problem. This commander's used to dealing with Jewish people who weren't citizens, so he could kind of do whatever he wanted.
And he did whatever he wanted. He
now
was known to do
he's
that.
holding a Jewish Roman citizen, and he figures, I'm in hot water. I'm in trouble. I got to tread very carefully.
That's right.
Here.
Because he wasn't allowed to do that to a Roman citizen. So what does he do? He goes to the Sanhedrin to see if they have any charges against him. Now, Judy, you mentioned earlier, many years had passed. This is not the same Sanhedrin that he left, which while had a lot of control by the Pharisees. On the contrary, the Pharisees, according to Josephus, the historian, had really lost their authority in it, and the Sanhedrin the high priest had become who has the most money. In fact, it's interesting, they note in the historian that the temple stood for 420 years, but if you took out a number of the main ones, that the rest of the 300 plus only lasted not even a year each.
That there were 300 high priests during that 420 years.
Right. To see how few of them, at this point, this is why we needed the Messiah, because the corruption within the body of the Jewish people had fallen to this state.
And we see that at this point in time now, it was more the Sadduceans, can't get that out, sorry, that had control of the high priest and this governing body that he was brought in front of. So now we see that he's going to begin his second defense, and he starts it out by saying, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all good consciousness to this day. Again, this is where we get to, if you're not understanding the culture, you're not understanding the time, you don't understand really the import behind his words.
Right. Here he is, a Jew talking to another Jew, saying, I've kept God's word. In other words, I've kept the commandments and the Torah. I'm following. I'm as religious of a Jew as you are, and I have my faith in the Jewish Messiah. Those two things do not, you can't have, people think, if you believe in Messiah, you can't have the Torah. No, on the contrary. Yeshua said, I've not come to abolish the Torah of the prophets, but he brings them together. And through our faith in Messiah, the Torah is enriched even more and is more important to us because it's following God's command and what he has called us to do.
So, even though it kind of makes it sound like, well, he was just a good person, he was conscientious, there was really much more behind this, as you just said. And, now it's really it's in the Sanhedrin's hands.
Right. Matter of fact, at one point, Judy, he, unbeknownst to him,
oh yeah,
almost causes a blasphemy by talking to the high priest and not realizing who the high priest was, because he wasn't dressed in the high priest garments, and they were switching so fast you wouldn't have known. Ironically, he sends a curse on him that about a decade later, when the Romans come and take over, exactly what happens is what he said, and that he fell by the sword and was executed as well. So, Judy, we see here these things taking place. What's going on, his first defense is, look, I'm a Jew, I keep the Torah, I love the temple, and I'm bringing the gospel to the Gentiles so they can come in. It's not until that point that the problems start happening, but we see here God's plan of bringing the Gentiles into the kingdom was not an easy step, but that's God's calling to bring Jew and Gentile together, one in Messiah. When we get back from the break, we're going to be taking your questions. If you have a question, mail us at mail@rabbiscott.com. Check out the website. We'll be back right after this.